Madam Speaker, the second pillar of my taxation proposal this year is job creation through revival of growth and investment and promotion of domestic manufacturing and Make in India. I propose to undertake a series of steps in this direction to attract capital, both domestic and foreign. Tax pass-through is proposed to be allowed in Category 1 and Category 2. Alternative investment funds, so that tax can be levied on the investors in these funds and not on the fund per se. This will step up the ability of these funds to mobilize higher resources and make higher investments in small and medium enterprises, infrastructure and social projects, and provide the much required private equity to the new venture of startups. A step was taken in the last budget to encourage the real estate investment trust and the infrastructure investment trust by providing partial pass-through to them. These collective investment vehicles have an important role to revive construction activity. A large quantum of funds are unlocked in various completed projects which need to be released to facilities new infrastructure projects to take off. I therefore propose to rationalize the capital gains regime for the sponsors existing at the time of listing of the units of REITs and InvITs subject to the payment of security transaction tax. The rental income from REITs from their own assets will have a pass-through facility. The present taxation structure has an inbuilt incentive for fund managers to operate from offshore locations. To encourage such offshore fund managers to relocate back to India, I propose to modify the permanent establishment norms to the effect that mere presence of a fund manager in India would not constitute a permanent establishment of the offshore fund, resulting in adverse tax consequences. Implementation of general anti-avoidance rule has been a matter of public debate. The investment sentiment in the country has now turned positive, and we need to accelerate this momentum. There are also certain contentious issues relating to GAAR which we need to resolve. It has therefore been decided to defer the applicability of GAAR by 2 years. Further, it has also been decided, when implemented, that GAAR would apply prospectively to investments made on or after 1/4/2017. Today, I see a lot of young entrepreneurs running businesses, ventures, and wanting to start new ones. They need latest technology. Therefore, to facilitate technology inflow into the businesses at low cost, I propose to reduce the rate of income tax on royalty fees for technical services from 25% to 10%. To generate employment opportunities, it is proposed to extend the deduction, benefit of deduction of employment of new regular workmen to all business entities. The eligibility threshold of minimum 100 workmen is being reduced to 50. The role of indirect taxes has also been very important in the context of promotion of domestic manufacturing and Make in India. In indirect taxes, therefore, I propose to reduce the rate of basic custom duty on certain inputs, raw material, intermediates, and components in all 22 items, so as to minimize the impact of duty inversion and reduce manufacturing costs in several sectors. Some of these changes will address the problem of Senvet credit accumulation due to the levy of SAD. I propose to fully exempt all goods except populated printed circuit boards for the use in manufacturing of the ITA bound items from SAD, and reduce the SAD on imports of certain other inputs of raw materials subject to the actual user condition. These changes are detailed in an annexure to my budget speech. My next proposal is regarding minimum government and maximum governance, with focus on the ease of doing business and simplification of tax procedures without compromising on tax revenues. The total wealth tax collection in the country is 1,008 crores in 13-14. Should a tax which leads to high cost of collection and low cost and low yield be continued, or should it be replaced with a low cost, higher yield tax? The rich and wealthy must pay more tax than the less affluent ones. I have therefore decided to abolish wealth tax and replace it with an additional 2% surcharge on the super rich with a taxable income of over rupees 1 crore. This will lead to tax simplification and enable the department to focus on ensuring compliance and widening of the tax base. As against a tax sacrifice of 1,008 crores, through this measure, the department would be collecting an additional rupees 9,000 crores on the 2% additional surcharge. Further, to track wealth held by individuals and entities, the information regarding assets which are currently required to be furnished in the wealth tax return will be captured in the income tax returns. This will ensure the abolition of wealth tax does not lead to escape of any income from the tax net. The provisions relating to indirect transfers of income tax, which is a legacy from the previous government, contains several ambiguities. This provision is being suitably cleaned up. Further concerns regarding applicability of indirect transfers, provisions to dividends paid by foreign companies to their stakeholders will be addressed by the CBDT through a clarificatory circular. These changes would eliminate the scope for discretionary exercise of power and provide a hassle-free structure to the taxpayers. I reiterate what I have said in the last budget, that ordinarily retrospective tax provisions adversely impact on stability and predictability of the taxation regime, and resort to such provisions shall be avoided. Further, to reduce associated hassles to smaller taxpayers and compliance of cost in domestic transfer pricing, I propose to increase the threshold limit from rupees 5 crores to 20 crores. In order to rationalize the MAT provisions for FIIs, profits corresponding to their income from capital gains on transactions in securities which are liable to tax at a lower rate shall not be subject to MAT. The Tax Administration Reforms Commission has given a number of recommendations to improve administration in tax department. These recommendations are in the advanced stage of examination and will appropriately be implemented during the course of the year. As a part of the GST, I had proposed to subsume educational cess and the secondary and higher educational cess in the central excise duty. In effect, the general rate of central excise duty of 12.36% including cess is now being rounded off to 12.5%. I propose to revise the specific rate of central excise duty in certain other commodities as detailed in the annexure. However, in the case of petrol and diesel, such specific rates are being revised only to the extent of subsuming the quantum of educational cess presently levied on them, keeping the total incidence of excise duties unchanged. The ad valorem rate of excise duties lower than 12% and those higher than 12%, with a few exceptions, are not being increased. Some changes are also being made to the excise levy on cigarettes and compounded levy scheme applicable to pan masala, gutka and certain other tobacco items. To give a boost to domestic leather footwear industry, the excise duty on footwear where leather uppers and having retail price of more than 1,000 per pair is being reduced to 6%. To further facilitate the ease of doing business, online excise and service tax registrations will be done in 2 working days. The assessees under the taxes will be allowed to issue digitally signed invoices and maintain electronic records. These measures will cut down a lot of paperwork, red tape, time limit for taking SENVAT credit into inputs and input services are being increased from 6% to 1 year as a measure of business facilitation. Introduction of GST is clearly awaited by trade and industry. To facilitate smooth transition of levy of tax on services by both centre and states, it is proposed to increase the present rate of service tax plus education test from 12.36 to a consolidated rate of 14%. Madam Speaker, cleanliness of households and cleanliness environment are very important social causes. The 4th pillar of my taxation proposal this year therefore relates to initiatives for the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. In my direct tax proposals, I have proposed 100% deduction for contributions other than by way of CSR contributions to the Swachh Bharat Kosh. A similar tax treatment is also being proposed for the Clean Ganga Fund. In indirect taxes, I propose to increase the clean energy cess from 100 to 200 rupees 200 per metric ton of coal to finance the clean environment initiatives. Excise duty on sacks of bags of polymer of ethylene other than those for industrial use is being increased from 12 to 15%. It is proposed to have an enabling provision to levy Swachh Bharat cess at a rate of 2% or less on all services if the need arises. This cess will be effective from a date to be notified. Resources generated from this cess will be used for financing and promoting initiatives towards Swachh Bharat. It is also proposed to exempt services of common affluent treatment plant from service tax. The concessions from customs and excise duty currently available on specified parts of manufacturing of electrical operated vehicles and hybrid vehicles are being extended for one more year up to 31/3/16. Madam, the fifth pillar of my taxation proposal this year is extension of benefits to the middle class taxpayers. These proposals in this regard are the following. Increase in limit of deduction of health insurance premium from 15,000 to 25,000 rupees. Madam, this is being done to encourage people to take health insurances as a part of our social security program. This will also enable a tax rebate. For senior citizens, this limit will be increased to 30,000 from the existing 10,000. For very senior citizens of the age of 80 years or above who are not covered by health insurance, deduction of rupees 30,000 towards expenditure incurred on their treatment will be allowed. हर वरिष्ठ नागरिक को 30,000 रुपए का सालाना डिडक्शन मेडिकल ट्रीटमेंट का मिलेगा. The deduction limit of 60,000 towards expenditure on account of specified diseases of serious nature is proposed to be enhanced to 80,000 in the case of senior citizens. Additional deduction of 25,000 will be allowed for differently abled persons under Section 80DD and Section 80U of the Income Tax Act. The limit of deduction on account of contribution to a pension fund and the new pension scheme is proposed to be increased from rupees 1 lakh to 1,50,000 each year. The next proposal, Madam, is important. To provide social safety net, the facility of pension to individuals, an additional deduction of rupees 50,000 is proposed to be provided for contribution to the new pension scheme under Section 80CCD. This will enable India to become a pensioned society instead of a pensionless society. तो अपने जीवन के अर्निंग काल में जो भी पेंशन फंड को 50,000 रुपए तक देगा सालाना, उसको टैक्स की उस वर्ष की छूट मिलेगी ताकि ये आगे जाके वरिष्ठ आयु में उसकी पेंशन बन सके. Investments in the Sukanya Smriddhi scheme, which was recently launched by the Prime Minister, is already eligible for deduction under 80C. All payments made for the beneficiaries, that is the girl child, including interest payment on deposits, will be fully exempted from tax. Transport allowance, which is allowed to all taxpayers and is currently at rupees 800 per month. Transport allowance exemption is being increased from rupees 800 to rupees 1600 per month. For the benefit of senior citizens, service tax exemption will be provided on the Varisht Bima Yojana. Madam Speaker, I am giving these concessions to individual taxpayers despite inadequate fiscal space. After taking into account the tax concessions given to the middle class payers in my last budget and in the present one, including the earlier concessions, an individual taxpayer can now get a benefit up to rupees 4,44,200 as detailed in the annexure. As and when my fiscal capacity improves, individual taxpayers will have a lot to look forward to. Madam Speaker, there are several standalone proposals relating to taxation. These include conversion of existing excise duty on petrol and diesel to the extent of rupees 4 per litre to road cess to fund investment in roads and other infrastructure. ये जो कल विषय उठे यहाँ पर कि दुनिया में तेल की कीमत में कमी हुई है, जो उपभोक्ता को भी दिया है, उसमें से कुछ लाभ हाईवे कंस्ट्रक्शंस के लिए और रेलवेज के लिए भी उसका प्रयोग होगा. An additional sum of rupees 40,000 will be made available through this measure to these sectors. In service tax, exemption is being extended to certain pre-cold storage services in relation to fruits and vegetables so as to incentivize value addition in the crucial sector. The negative list under the service tax is being slightly pruned and certain other exemptions are being withdrawn to widen the tax base. Yoga is India's well-acknowledged gift to the world. It is proposed to include yoga within the ambit of charitable purposes of Section 215 of the Income Tax Act. Further, to mitigate problems faced by many genuine charitable organizations, it is proposed to modify ceiling on receipts from activities in the nature of trade, commerce, business to 20% of the total receipts from existing ceiling of 25 lakhs. A national database on the non-profit organization is being developed. Enactment of the direct tax code has been under discussion for quite some time. Most of the provisions of the direct tax code have been included in the Income Tax Act. Amongst the very few aspects of the DTC which were left out, we had addressed some issues in the present budget. Further, jurisprudence on income tax is well evolved. Considering these aspects, there is no great merit in going ahead with the direct tax code as it exists today. Madam, the detailed direct and indirect proposals are given in the annexure to the budget speech and the other budget documents which are being laid on the table of the House. My direct tax proposals would lead to a loss of revenue of rupees 8,315 crore, whereas my proposal in indirect will yield rupees 23,383 crores. The net impact of my all tax proposals would be a revenue gain of 15,068. To conclude, Madam, it is no secret that expectations from this budget have been high. People who urge us to undertake big bang reforms also say that the Indian economy is a supergiant which moves slowly but surely. Even our worst critics would admit that we have moved rapidly. In this speech, I have clearly outlined not only what we are going to do immediately, but also a roadmap for the future. I think I can genuinely stake for our government a claim of intellectual honesty. We have been consistent in what we have said and what we are doing. We are committed, Madam Speaker, to achieving what we have been voted to power for: change, growth, jobs, and genuine effective upliftment of the poor and underprivileged. Our commitment to the Daridra Narayan is steadfast, and is our commitment to constitutional principles of equality and justice for all without concern of caste, creed and religion. This is in the spirit of the Upanishads inspired mantra, Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Paschyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhavet. With these words, Madam, I commend the budget to this Honourable House.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.